In a bustling airport terminal, a German shepherd suddenly starts barking furiously at a pregnant woman, causing a stir. The woman freezes, clutching her belly in panic, looking desperately for help. Security officer Alex Foster is immediately on alert, wondering why the dog, trained to detect dangerous threats, is acting so aggressively. Is she hiding something deadly? Or is it just a false alarm? As the tension rises and time runs out, Alex soon realizes that the danger might not be what it seems. But is it already too late? The bustling sounds of JFK Airport echoed throughout the terminal as Alex Foster adjusted his jacket and clipped the leash to his K9 partner, Charlie. It was just another typical morning on the job, filled with the usual clatter of luggage, chattering travelers, and the whirring of metal detectors. But even in this chaos, Alex remained calm. He had been a security officer here for over a decade and had seen his fair share of strange incidents. Today, however, something felt off. Charlie, the German shepherd at Alex's side, was normally the picture of composure. Trained to sniff out drugs, explosives, and other potential threats, Charlie's demeanor was always one of focus and precision. But as they walked down the terminal, something strange caught Alex's attention. Charlie began to pull at the leash, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Alex glanced around, trying to determine what had triggered the dog's reaction. His eyes landed on a woman walking briskly towards the security checkpoint. She looked ordinary enough. A young woman, maybe in her mid-30s, her hand resting gently on her slightly protruding belly. Her face was a bit pale, her eyes darting nervously from side to side. Alex couldn't put his finger on it, but something about her seemed off. Charlie's growl was low at first, then it grew louder, more persistent, as if the dog was trying to communicate something urgent. Alex felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't the usual behavior. Charlie's instincts were finely tuned, and it only acted like this when it sensed something dangerous. But the woman? She seemed completely unremarkable. "Charlie, calm down," Alex muttered, trying to gently pull the dog back. But Charlie wasn't listening. The German shepherd's muscles were taut, his ears pricked forward, and his eyes locked onto the woman with an intensity that unsettled Alex. The woman noticed the sudden attention and stopped in her tracks. She took a step back, looking down at Charlie with confusion and a hint of fear. "Please make him stop," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I don't know what's going on." Alex felt a pang of unease. This wasn't normal. He took a few steps forward, standing beside Charlie, his hand resting gently on the dog's collar. "Are you carrying anything that might be triggering his response?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though a knot of anxiety had formed in his stomach. The woman shook her head. "No," she said quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just pregnant. I don't know why he's acting like this." Alex exchanged a look with his partner, Jack, who was stationed at the nearby checkpoint. Jack raised an eyebrow, clearly as puzzled as Alex. "You think she's carrying something?" Jack asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "I don't know," Alex replied, keeping his gaze fixed on the woman. "But we need to check. This isn't just a random reaction." Alex and Jack led Sarah to a private screening room where they began to conduct further checks. Sarah's breathing was shallow, her hands trembling as she clutched her stomach protectively. "I haven't done anything wrong," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Charlie paced nervously outside the room, his growling becoming more frequent and sharper. Alex's concern deepened. This was more than just a misunderstanding. Something was very wrong, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He tried to push the unsettling feeling to the back of his mind as he focused on Sarah's condition. "Do you have any medical conditions we should be aware of?" A female officer, Laura, asked Sarah gently, her tone softer than Alex's. Sarah shook her head, her voice quivering. "No, I'm 7 months pregnant, but that's all." Laura nodded and proceeded with the usual protocol, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. If Sarah wasn't carrying anything dangerous, why had Charlie reacted like that? And why was she acting so nervous? Suddenly, the silence in the room was broken by Sarah's sharp gasp. She clutched her stomach, her face contorted in pain. "Something's wrong," she whispered through gritted teeth, her eyes wide with panic. "Please, help me." Alex's heart raced. This was no longer about a security threat. It was about a woman in distress, and possibly her unborn child. Get the medical team now! He barked, rushing toward the door. Alex's heart was pounding as he led Sarah through the corridors of the airport. The hum of the terminal was a distant echo now. The only sounds he could hear were Charlie's anxious growls and the soft click of their footsteps against the polished floor. Sarah's distress was palpable. She kept her eyes down, her hands wrapped protectively around her swollen belly, almost as if she was trying to shield herself from the growing tension surrounding her. "Please, I'm not hiding anything," she whispered, her voice shaky as she looked at Alex. "I swear." Alex didn't reply immediately. He wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Charlie's behavior was out of the ordinary, and the way Sarah was reacting, her fear, the way she seemed to know something was off, was making Alex feel more unsettled by the minute. As they reached the private screening room, Alex turned to his partner, Jack. "Stay here with Charlie," he ordered, trying to maintain a calm composure. "I'll take care of the rest." Jack nodded but didn't take his eyes off Sarah. "Something's wrong," he muttered under his breath. "I can feel it too." Inside the screening room, Sarah was asked to sit in one of the chairs, her eyes scanning the space nervously. The room felt colder than it should have, the sterile white walls and fluorescent lights making it feel more like a hospital than an airport. The officers who were there to assist her moved around quietly, trying not to make her feel more uncomfortable than she already did. Alex stood by, his arms crossed, watching Sarah with a mix of suspicion and concern. The female officer, Laura, stepped forward and began asking the routine questions. "Do you have any medical conditions we should know about?" Her tone was professional but gentle. Sarah shook her head. "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm 7 months pregnant, that's all." Alex saw her hands tremble slightly as she spoke, and his gut told him that there was more to this story than met the eye. But how could he dig deeper without pushing her further into panic? He needed answers, but he also needed to be careful. Time was running out, and if there was a genuine threat, they needed to find it quickly. Suddenly, there was a muffled growl from the hallway. Alex tensed. It was Charlie, still on edge, his sharp instincts alert to something that Alex could not yet understand. "Please," Sarah whispered again, her voice breaking through the tension. "I don't know why he's reacting like this. I'm not carrying anything. I haven't done anything wrong." Her eyes filled with tears. "I just want to get home." Alex could see the fear in her eyes. It wasn't the fear of being caught doing something wrong, but something much deeper. She was terrified, and it wasn't just because of Charlie. It was something else. Something she wasn't telling them. Before Alex could ask her anything further, Sarah let out a sudden gasp. Her face contorted with pain, and she grabbed her stomach, her body jerking as if struck by a sharp, unseen force. "Something's wrong," she gasped. I don't know what's happening." Alex's instincts kicked in immediately. He moved to her side, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We need medical assistance now!" he ordered, his voice sharp. One of the officers, a young man named Mike, rushed out of the room to find help. But before he could leave, Sarah's body went rigid, her face twisted in agony. She gasped again, clutching her belly. Her breath became shallow, as if each inhale was a struggle. "Please," she whimpered, her voice trembling. "Help me, please, I can't breathe. It hurts so much." In that moment, Alex understood. This wasn't just an airport security issue anymore. This was something far more serious. He moved quickly, signaling to the other officers to clear the way. His mind raced, but his movements were swift and precise. "We need to get her to the medical unit now!" Charlie's growls grew louder from the hallway, more frantic than before. It was almost as if the dog was sensing the woman's pain. He could feel her distress, just as Alex could, but Charlie's keen senses were telling him that something was terribly wrong. As the officers moved Sarah toward the medical area, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. The woman was in pain, and there was no clear reason why. It wasn't just the pregnancy. There was something else, something deeper, something neither he nor anyone else could see. Jack was standing with Charlie, his hands nervously gripping the leash. Charlie's movements were erratic now, his body tense, every muscle coiled as if ready to spring into action. The dog's usual alertness had shifted to something different, something urgent. It wasn't just a security threat. It was as if Charlie understood that the woman's life, and her baby's life, was in imminent danger. Jack watched as the officers hurried Sarah away, his concern growing. He had been around long enough to know when something was truly off, and this situation had all the signs of a life-or-death emergency. "What's happening?" Jack muttered to Charlie. But the dog could only growl in response, his eyes locked on the door that Sarah had just been taken through. Sarah was now lying on a gurney, her face pale with pain as paramedics worked quickly to stabilize her. One of them, a young woman named Lisa, was applying pressure to Sarah's abdomen, trying to assess the situation. "We need to get her to a hospital," Lisa said urgently, her voice tight with concern. "This isn't just early labor. There's something wrong here." Alex felt a cold shiver run down his spine as he looked at Sarah, her face twisted in agony. "What's happening to her?" he demanded. Lisa shook her head, glancing down at Sarah's rapidly deteriorating condition. "It's not clear yet, but I think it's a rupture. She could be hemorrhaging internally." Her voice faltered as she looked back at Alex. "If we don't get her to a surgical unit immediately, both she and the baby are in serious danger." Alex's heart dropped. He had seen his fair share of emergencies, but nothing like this. Charlie had known. He had sensed something long before anyone else. That same instinct that had made the dog react so strongly to Sarah wasn't just a security concern. It had been a warning they had failed to fully understand until now. As the paramedics rushed to prepare Sarah for transport, Alex stayed close, his thoughts racing. The woman who had been under suspicion was now fighting for her life, and he was helpless to do anything but watch. The sound of sirens cut through the air as the paramedics rushed Sarah down the sterile hallway of the airport medical unit. Alex followed closely behind, his mind racing. This wasn't just another security issue, it was a life-or-death situation. As they reached the emergency exit, the doors swung open to reveal an ambulance waiting outside, its lights flashing and sirens blaring. The team of paramedics quickly loaded Sarah onto the stretcher, securing her carefully, but there was a sense of urgency in their movements. Alex stood at the door watching them work. He had been through countless emergencies, but there was something about this one that gnawed at him. Charlie had sensed it first, the danger that no one else could detect, but now it seemed as if the worst had already happened. The rupture, the internal hemorrhaging, it all pointed to a terrifying reality. As the ambulance doors slammed shut, the sound of the siren became distant. Alex felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. He had been trained to handle threats, to assess risks, but what had just unfolded before him had nothing to do with typical security measures. There was no protocol for this kind of crisis, no training for a life hanging in the balance. The woman who had been accused of carrying something illegal, who had been the focus of his suspicion, was now fighting for her life, and somehow, Charlie had known. Inside the ambulance, Sarah lay unconscious, her face pale and drenched in sweat. Lisa, the paramedic who had first assessed her, worked quickly, monitoring her vital signs. "Her pulse is erratic," Lisa murmured, looking at the monitor. "We need to stabilize her before we get to the hospital. Her blood pressure is dangerously low." Sarah's breathing was shallow, and every movement of the ambulance seemed to worsen her condition. Despite the frantic pace of the paramedics, Sarah's body was not responding. Her internal injuries were too severe. "We're almost there," one of the other paramedics said, his voice tense. "Hang on, ma'am. We're almost at the hospital." Lisa looked at Sarah's abdomen, her mind racing. The rupture she suspected earlier was no ordinary injury. It wasn't just a complication from the pregnancy, it was a tear in a major blood vessel. And unless they performed surgery immediately, Sarah wouldn't make it. Neither would the baby. As the hospital came into view, the paramedics exchanged a quick glance. They were preparing for the worst. Meanwhile, Alex stood outside, his eyes fixed on the ambulance as it sped away. He hadn't realized how much he had invested in Sarah's fate until now. His bond with Charlie was something he had never questioned. He trusted the dog's instincts implicitly. But this was different. If Charlie hadn't reacted, if the team hadn't acted so quickly, Sarah and her child might not have had a chance. Charlie, still by Alex's side, let out a low whine. His sharp eyes were fixed on the empty road where the ambulance had just disappeared. "You're right, buddy," Alex said quietly, his hand gently resting on Charlie's head. "We did what we could." but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than we know." He watched as Charlie sniffed the air again, his behavior still unsettled, almost as if the dog knew the mystery wasn't over. There was something else out there, something Alex couldn't yet see. By the time Sarah was wheeled into the emergency room, she was barely clinging to life. The doctors and nurses surrounded her, working fast to assess the damage. Dr. Emily Hayes, a seasoned trauma surgeon, immediately took charge. She had dealt with hundreds of emergencies in her career, but Sarah's case was unique. "Prepare for surgery," Dr. Hayes ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. "We need to repair that rupture and fast. There's no time to waste." The surgical team quickly prepped for the operation, but as Dr. Hayes examined Sarah's vitals, she noticed something odd. Her body was responding strangely to the medication, and her blood pressure continued to fluctuate wildly. Something wasn't right. "She's losing too much blood," Dr. Hayes said to the nurse, her voice laced with concern. "We need to stabilize her before we can proceed." As the team worked tirelessly to stabilize Sarah, Dr. Hayes couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't just a case of a pregnant woman with a medical complication. There was something about Sarah's condition that felt deliberate. The woman had been in distress before they even got her to the hospital. And it wasn't just the rupture. There were signs of trauma, physical and emotional, that didn't match up with a simple medical emergency. Dr. Hayes glanced at the surgical charts again. Sarah's injuries were severe, but the question remained, how had this happened? And why had no one noticed the danger earlier? As the hours passed, Alex could do little but wait. Charlie sat by his side, a comforting presence in the otherwise sterile waiting area. He kept his eyes trained on the door as though waiting for the moment when they would get answers. But as the night wore on, more questions arose. The hospital staff had found no signs of foul play, no obvious trauma beyond the internal rupture. But Alex couldn't ignore the strange gut feeling that this was all connected. Sarah wasn't just the victim of an accident. She had been hiding something, and it wasn't just the pregnancy. The hours dragged by, each one heavier than the last. But finally, the doctor who had been working on Sarah emerged from the operating room. "She's stable," Dr. Hayes said, her face grim. "We've repaired the rupture, but her condition is fragile. It's going to be a long recovery." Alex exhaled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. But that relief was short-lived. Dr. Hayes's next words stopped him cold. "We found something in her medical history, something she hadn't told anyone about." Dr. Hayes paused, choosing her words carefully. "She's been under extreme stress, and it's clear that something has been weighing heavily on her for some time. But what I don't understand is why she didn't seek medical help sooner." Alex's mind raced. What had Sarah been hiding? And what had she been through to bring her to this point? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, but there was still something missing. "Where is she now?" Alex asked, his voice low. Dr. Hayes looked at him, her expression unreadable. "She's stable for now, but there's something about her story that doesn't add up. I think she knows more than she's letting on." The hours that followed were tense. Sarah remained unconscious, stabilized but in critical condition. Alex stayed by her side, though he was unsure of what more he could do. The hospital was quiet, save for the low hum of medical equipment and the occasional footsteps in the hallway. Hayes had been straightforward with him, but her words echoed in Alex's mind. "There's something off about Sarah's case. It's not just the rupture. Her body is responding as though there's a deeper issue at play. Emotional, perhaps even psychological." Sarah had been hiding something. Alex felt certain of it. And yet, even after hours of questioning and investigation, he still couldn't piece together what the woman had been trying to protect. What secret was buried beneath her fear? As the evening stretched on, Alex was called into Sarah's room. The doctor, Dr. Hayes, had a look of concern in her eyes. "She's awake," Dr. Hayes said. "You can talk to her now." Alex nodded, his stomach tightening with anticipation. As he entered the room, he saw Sarah lying there, pale but alert. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment they were filled with confusion, then fear. "Mr. Foster," she said in a hoarse voice, Is everything okay? My baby..." Alex sat beside her, trying to hide the worry in his own eyes. Your baby is fine, Sarah. You made it through the surgery. You're stable now. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't want anyone to know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to cause any trouble. Sarah, what aren't you telling us? Alex asked gently, his voice calm but firm. Why did Charlie react the way he did? What's going on? Sarah's face crumpled with emotion. She looked away, staring at the wall, trying to avoid his gaze. The silence in the room thickened. I was afraid, she said finally, her voice breaking. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of being judged. Alex waited patiently, giving her the space she needed. He had a feeling she was on the verge of telling him everything, but the fear was overwhelming her. Why were you afraid? He asked softly. Sarah inhaled shakily, her hands gripping the sheets. I wasn't supposed to be pregnant. The doctors told me I couldn't have children, and I didn't know how to tell anyone. I was alone. My family, they didn't know. I didn't want to bring shame on them. And now everything, it's just too much. The weight of her words sank into Alex's chest. It wasn't just the physical trauma she had been hiding. It was the emotional burden she had carried for so long. I thought I was alone in this. I thought I could handle it on my own, she continued, her voice trembling. But I couldn't. I was wrong. Alex listened intently, the pieces finally falling into place. The stress, the emotional strain she had been under. It all made sense now. Her body had reacted violently to the pressure she had been under, and that's what triggered her condition. Charlie had sensed it, the fear, the strain on her body. He hadn't just reacted to a possible security threat. He had reacted to a deep, hidden distress. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. Alex reached out, placing a reassuring hand on hers. You didn't cause any trouble. You're here now, and you're going to be okay. The next few days passed slowly, and Sarah's condition improved with each hour. The doctors were amazed at how well she was recovering, considering the severity of her injury. As the time went on, the burden of her secret lifted, and so did the heavy atmosphere that had hung over the hospital room. Alex visited her every day, checking in on her and making sure she had everything she needed. He could see the change in her. The woman who had been filled with fear and uncertainty was now beginning to regain some of her strength. It was clear that she wasn't just recovering physically, she was healing emotionally as well. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, Sarah finally smiled. I don't know how to thank you, she said, looking at Alex with gratitude. I didn't think I would make it through this, or that anyone would care. Alex smiled back. You don't need to thank me. You're strong, Sarah. You made it through this, and now you have a chance to start fresh. Start fresh, Sarah echoed, her voice thoughtful. That's what I need. A fresh start for me. And my baby. The tension that had once surrounded her seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace. Sarah was no longer hiding from her past. She had confronted it head-on, and now she could move forward. As for Alex, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about security and keeping people safe anymore. It was about being there for someone when they needed it most. And he knew that his bond with Charlie had been the key to saving Sarah's life, both physically and emotionally. The following week, Sarah was discharged from the hospital, ready to start her new life. Alex watched as she walked out of the building, a small but hopeful smile on her face. The future was uncertain, but Sarah was no longer alone. Take care of yourself, Sarah, Alex called after her. She turned back, smiling. I will, Mr. Foster. Thank you for everything. As she walked away, Charlie by Alex's side, Alex realized that their job as security officers was never just about catching criminals or preventing disasters. Sometimes, it was about saving lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. And with a partner like Charlie, Alex knew that there was nothing they couldn't face together. Thank you for joining us on Sarah's journey. Your support means the world, and it's stories like these that remind us how powerful hope, courage, and a little help from others can truly be. If you were moved by this story, please hit like and share it with your friends and family. Let's spread the message of hope and resilience. and inspire others who may need a little encouragement today. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming story like this one. Together, we can make a difference.